Hello and welcome back to Podcasting as Praxis. I'm Dave, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Rob, mine are he and him.
And I'm Mick, mine are he and him.
Hi Mick, been a while.
Hello, good to be back.
Yeah, you're right, Matt.
Yeah, always good to
I wasn't
you.
accidentally quoting Gary Glitter there.
Before I don't draw attention to that. That's completely fucking sideswiped me.
Sorry.
Jesus
You know
Christ.
when something goes into your head and you just have to say it, and then you're like, why did I say that out loud?
Oh God! Oh fucking hell! Well, but I'm going to let Rob unleash some news on us. But before I do this, just very quickly, would obviously like to announce Norman Tebbit. Right, Rob, over to you.
Yeah, burn in hell, Norman. And speaking of burning in hell, for a quick transition, there was some very good reporting from the Financial Times by Stephen Foley and, yes, unfortunately, also Jim Pickard. But about, some people who've had some plans for, the war-torn, exploded area of Gaza. I'm just going to quote a little bit. The Boston Consulting Group has helped the Israeli and US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and supported a related security company, but then disavowed the project, which has been marred by the deaths of hundreds of Palestinians and fired two partners last month. This was essentially a multi-million-dollar contract between the Boston Consulting Group and some various incredibly sketchy, middlemen / institutes, and also the Tony Blair Institute to quote-unquote model the costs of relocating Palestinians from Gaza and help launch an aid scheme. The aid scheme in question, by the way, if you were curious, is the aforementioned Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is, the one that's like a proxy for the Israel and the US. It's also the one where, desperate Palestinians show up for, aid distribution and then get shot by the Israelis.
Awesome. I will say this for Tony Blair, at least this doesn't count as a rare intervention because there's no such thing as a war crime involving a rare intervention from Tony Blair. They're surprisingly common, actually.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Tony Blair can go fuck himself, but where are they proposing to relocate everyone to?
I don't think that that's something you should worry your pretty little head about, Jamie.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
No, I should state up front, by the way, and just so
if there's one thing I know about all the nations that you mentioned involved in this plan, it's that they love to welcome desperate foreigners into their arms.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it sounds very believable and plausible.
I mean, there was that insane plan from, 6 months ago, a year now ago, that they would, to make Israel, accept all Palestinians in an encampment in the Sinai desert, basically, something along those lines, some kind of insanity. But
they'll do literally anything except give the land back. Anything except giving the land back, and it's fine.
Well,
doesn't matter how stupid it is.
At this time, they have some interesting new models for land allocation. Quote again from the Financial Times. One scenario estimated more than 500,000 Gazans would leave the enclave with relocation packages worth $9,000 per person, or around $5 billion in total. Yes, that sounds like a lot of money, but have you considered, quote again, it would generate $23,000 in saving on every Palestinian relocating because these subsidies were cheaper than spending on housing support at other costs inside the territory. So, you could spend $32,000. No reason, I guess.
Okay, but where exactly can you relocate to for $9,000?
Well, you'd get $9,000 and you would...
Torquay.
I am briefly reminded of that tweet from years ago now of the guy who said that, the reason we should welcome all the people of Hong Kong into the UK is that they could displace the native population of Torquay and rebuild a commercial hub, aka Hong Kong, on the British coastline. So maybe it's the same like that, but with more hummus, I guess.
Oh, everything about this fucking sucks so badly.
Yeah.
I hate this.
Well, you'd think so,
That's
but
the
let me
Tony
keep
Blair
reading.
guarantee, though, isn't it? To be fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you'd think so, but let me keep reading.
No.
The model by BCG provided assumptions for the costs of voluntary relocations for Gazans, rebuilding civilian housing, and using innovative financial models such as all of Gaza's land being put into a trust for redevelopment, whose assets could be sold to investors via digital tokens traded on the blockchain. Gazans would be offered the
Fuck
chance
off.
to...
Jesus fucking wept. Everyone working with a computer. Like, the only way to save the world, I'm convinced at this fucking point. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, you'd think so, and like I understand your negativity, Jamie, but have you considered...
Bulgarian jihad doesn't go far enough.
Break their keyboards and send them to the countryside. But yeah, JB, have you considered Gazans would be offered the chance to contribute their privately owned land to the trust in return for a token that gave them a right to a permanent housing unit? So, you know, what if you gave up like your ancestral home and farm, and everything along those lines in exchange for what I assume is, a house built of a shipping container?
Was this written by a robot, or should I have questions about the phrase housing unit?
I'm fairly convinced that the word housing unit is done deliberately because what they're probably... I haven't read this report. If I get the chance, I'll read the full thing. But I'm like, blind bet, I'm going to assume that what they're talking about is sea containers.
Yeah. What if we made like the entire Gaza Strip go seasteading? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But like if all of this made you a bit worried about, like, the role of the Boston Consultancy Group in particular and, the Tony Blair Institute by
angry about
extension.
the role of the Boston Consultancy Group, I'll tell you that much.
Well, but quote again the article, what Boston Consulting Group called guardrails were agreed, which declared that the project should not use consultants from the Middle East or Israel to avoid accusations of bias. So don't worry, this project is entirely above board because, no Arabs or Israelis were involved in the creation of these slides, so it's fine.
Yeah, because we trust the Americans as far as we can fucking throw them.
I mean,
yeah.
Look, I should say, also to legally cover our asses that, like, the Boston Consultancy Group has, like, entirely disavowed the work that was done on this and said this was done, expressly against the orders of, the senior partners who, when hearing of this matter, said, will you fucking stop doing this right now? And the Tony Blair Institute also said that, they merely contributed, like, a couple of their staffers contributed to a WhatsApp group and did not participate in, like, the creation of these slides. So,
Yeah, they didn't inhale.
Yes,
exactly. Because you definitely wouldn't want to set this up to be something that you could disavow later when it came out.
No.
Yeah.
You just be cynical to say otherwise.
This one about the
Tom
specific
Cruise's boss in Mission Impossible just like telling the papers, no, I've never heard of that cunt.
Quote, the second article about this, which is about the involvement of the Tony Blair Institute. One lengthy document on post-war Gaza, written by a Blair Institute staff member, was shared within the group for consideration. This included the idea of a Gaza Riviera with artificial islands off the coast akin to those in Dubai, blockchain-based trade initiatives, a deep-water port to tie Gaza into the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, and low-tax special economic zones. The document also said that the devastating war in Gaza had created a once-in-a-century opportunity to rebuild Gaza from first principles as a secure, modern, prosperous society.
The low-tax economic zones is where you make like really fancy cookies. But I mean, this honestly is fucking piss boiling because it's like, right, so the entire fucking, like, do you know what I mean? The entire world has basically rejected the blockchain, right? Like, all the governments that all the governments that were like, yes, we're going to have a national cryptocurrency and we're going to put, like, fucking, you know what I mean? Like, everything we're going to put British water fucking supplies on the blockchain, and all these other ideas have all gone down the shitter because they were complete fucking bollocks. And so now, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take a fucking displaced people who are being genocided, and we're going to like take their land and force that to be blockchain city. Fuck the lot of you. Get real jobs.
I mean, yeah. But Mick, to your point about wanting to be able to cover your ass, once this thing was uncovered, this is an incredible exchange. I'm going to read it in full, and we're going to be talking about your book later, but this is almost perfect. When first approached by the Financial Times regarding its role in the project, a TBI spokesperson said, quote, "Your story is categorically wrong. TBI was not involved in the preparation of this presentation, which was a BCG presentation, and had no input whatsoever into its content." The Financial Times then provided details of a 12-person message group used for the project, including 2 TBI staff, consultants, and the Israeli businessmen, as well as an unpublished TBI document shared within the group titled Gaza Economic Blueprint. At this point, the Tony Blair Institute spokesperson said, quote, "We have never said TBI knew nothing about what this group was working on, or that they weren't in on calls in which the group discussed their plans."
Oh, glad we cleared
I would
that
like
up.
to revise my previous lies.
No, it's just a clarification. They said, look, our staff were not involved in the creation of that presentation. The other stuff that has our logo on it, maybe we did have something to do with that, and maybe they were in some calls, glorifying the genocide of an entire population, but, what can you do, honestly?
But then, then today, yes, this is an insane blueprint for crimes against humanity, and then, obviously, Israel Katz has then come out and said, "Oh, no, do you know what, we can do even better than that, build a humanitarian city on the ruins of Rafah, force all the Palestinians in there, and then make it so they can't come out again." That's literally out just saying that today in Haaretz. So it's we just one up that much, even worse, even more horrific.
Oh, good. The solution to all of this was obviously going to be another open-air prison. That worked so well the last time that you tried it. Fuck off. I'm sick of the full fucking thing. Every one of these cunts can fuck off. Shall we move on to something? I don't know if it's a tad lighter, but it's definitely stupid in a very different way.
Yes, I'm in the mood for stupidity at this point.
Excellent. A man has been arrested by the FBI after being overheard planning a terrorist attack in Roblox.
In Roblox?
No, I must stress he was doing this in Roblox, not planning one in Roblox.
Okay, I was so excited.
James Wesley Burger of Texas.
Oh, give me a fucking break. That's not a real person.
Trying to explain Roblox to an American. Now imagine Wesley Burger.
Planned to carry out an ISIS-style terror attack on a Christian music festival. This is from 404 Media. So the FBI found this out after it was overheard in Roblox by another user who then went and tipped off the FBI. I should note that this tip-off came with screenshots, which I have for you.
Yes!
Which make it all the better.
But wait, does this now undermine, the podcaster's favourite legal defence by just adding in Minecraft to everything? Do we have to change it to in Roblox?
This has never once been a legal defence. We have never once carried this out. Do not give any credence to the words that Rob speaks at the moment. The witness observed this is from the statement put into the courts by the FBI. The witness observed the user of Crazy Pain, which is Mr. Burger, state that they were willing, as reported by the witness, to, quote, kill Shia Muslims at their mosque, court record said. Crazy Pain and another Roblox user continued to make violent statements, so the witness left the game. The witness stayed off of Roblox for 2 days, and when they returned they saw Crazy Pain say something else that worried them, according to the court filing. The witness observed Crazy Pain tell Roblox user 1 to check their message on Discord. Roblox user 1 replied on Roblox to Crazy Pain, they should delete the photograph of firearms within the unknown Discord chat. In case it was flagged as suspicious, the firearms should be kept hidden.
I should state, by the way, for our dear listeners, that when David says Crazy Pain, it is written CRAZZ3PAIN.
Yeah. So the feds obviously raided the house, and they got his laptop and discovered that someone in his family had already installed a keylogger on the laptop. And so they handed over all the details of the keylogger, which obviously just gave them even more fucking evidence against the guy. They then interviewed him in his living room, and he admitted that he used that account to play Roblox, and when asked about his plan to kill Christians at a concert, he said it was, at the time, quote, mostly a heightened emotional response. When his iPhone was searched, they discovered 2 notes on the phone that described how to avoid leaving behind DNA and fingerprints at a crime scene. Oh, so yeah, that the trial on goes, etc. So I'm looking forward to see what comes from that. I just thought that was a fun little short.
That's really fantastic.
Yeah. So last thing before we got on to the meat of today, which is obviously Mick's book. And it's tangential, I guess. So on Thursday, Zara Sultana finally left the Labour Party, which was, funnily enough, a day before the anniversary of the election, and on the same day as the Nuremberg rally. So, you know, incredible timing to do some shit like this. And she announced that she's going to co-lead the founding of a new party with Jeremy Corbyn, which is just wonderful timing.
Yeah, it is pretty good.
I mean,
you know,
so much piss. I mean, right now, Labour is, I think there was that one that came out today that put them at like 68% active disapproval and like 13% approval or some shit.
I mean, it will go lower. Like,
oh, it will go lower. They're hitting 20 points now, total in election polls.
We're getting so close.
So close. We are so close to finally being able to say it. Like, I'm so looking forward to it. So, like, this is all completely unknown at this point, right? So, it's co-leading the founding. It's not co-leading some sort of new party. It's co-leading the founding of. We don't know what shape it will be or anything else like that. It could come in many forms. But what it will be is funny as fuck, because some of the worst people you know are already shitting their pants very publicly about it. George Galloway begged for an invite.
My favourite, possibly my favourite one.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, so I mean, in the statement, it was basically, we're going to reach out to a bunch of independents and see who's interested in forming this new group. And so far, those are the only 2 names that we actually have, I think. Oh no, actually, Leanne Mohammed, I think, actually said that she was going to be involved.
Yeah,
which
I think yeah. Very
good.
It's like disgraceful that they would reach out to all those independents but not give an invite to the Gunsmith Cats. Do you know what I
mean? The Workers' Party note that Jeremy Corbyn is to co-lead a new party with Zara Sultana. Pretend I'm wearing a hat while I say this. There has been zero
I am
contact
always pretending you're wearing
this.
a hat when saying anything.
We can't join it due to significant differences on the issues of trans and LGBTQ++, comma, the Russia-Ukraine war, net zero, and other things. But we are open to an electoral agreement which avoids us both fighting each other for the benefit of Keir Starmer. Mr. Corbyn has had my number for 40 years. Okay, George.
Doing pretty well to keep the same phone number that long, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, really good job.
Yeah, dear George, please stay on the line, and operator will be right with you.
Sorry, new phone.
Incredible.
I don't recognise the number. There was also 2 hours after Sultana put her statement out, a massive pants-shitting message from Momentum went out to everyone still, for some reason, on their fucking email list.
How is Momentum still real?
To stay in Labour.
I just want to know how they're still real.
They fucking rang me before the local elections, like this year. They rang us and they were like, I was like,
did they need a candidate?
They rang us and they were like, oh, can I? Have you? I was like, I've already voted. I got a postal vote. Can I ask you who for? I was like, it wasn't fucking Labour. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll just let you. I'll leave you to it. I was like, yeah, you do that. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, just the worst melts. So obviously they're shitting their pants over this because the last vestiges of anyone involved, and there is probably going to fuck off and take the money away. Boo-hoo, get fucked. I hope none of them fucking jump ship. That's one of the fun things about this, is like the fact that nobody's really jumped ship to join Sultana yet. I don't want any of them to. Like, any of them that are still in Labour, fucking stay there. Like, stay. Maybe one or two of them possibly I'd consider, but like the majority of them, fuck off.
Yeah, I think John McDonnell's already been like, I'm so sad to see Zara Sultana leave, but, me and my many petitions will stick around and,
Yeah. These letters won't write themselves.
No.
Okay, John, you stay there. Fuck off. But getting into the other stuff, so an hour, one whole hour after the initial announcement went out, Gabriel Pogrund, shit stirrer extraordinaire. Exclusive, I understand Jeremy Corbyn has not agreed to join the New Left Party with Zara Sultana yet. He is furious and bewildered at the way it has been launched without consultation.
Yeah.
1 hour
I'm like, I'm not defending Pogrund, but like he did have like enough messages and shit in that article, because I read it, that I'm like, okay, like you are obviously stirring shit, but clearly also somebody's leaking, from inside the whatever thing it is you're starting. And quite frankly, Jeremy, at this point, if you're pissed, you've had like a year and a half to do this, and I don't understand why you didn't do it before. So,
Yeah, I mean, well, this is it. It looks like Sultana might have called his bluff, which is fair enough, but bewildered and furious are not words that I can imagine applied to Corbyn in any meaningful way. Like, it is 100% a fucking please do something about this from the McSweeney lot. Like, no shot there's anything else there. And he's been raked over the coals because, again, he's not joining a party. They're co-leading a founding of one. It's not the same thing. Like, the whole thing was just completely shit panic stations. But I would expect nothing more from the British media, which is why I'm now going to turn to Camilla Tominey, who wrote a massive pants-shitting article in the Telegraph, as she's wont to do. This has the potential, and I should note this is all prefaced with a million examples of like Zara Sultana is mean and nasty, and is racist against white people. Exactly the caliber of intellectual.
Yeah, she said some bad things about Tony Blair.
She said that she would celebrate his death, which, like, whomst among us.
Yeah.
So, okay. Oh no, stop it, Camilla, you're making her more and more human. This has the potential to be a political force more frightening than anything Britain has ever known. Despite Sultana's
anything Britain has ever known.
Anything.
All of it.
Anything.
So, more scary than, the provisional
more
IRA.
Scary than Lenin endorsing the fucking Labour Party. Like, to these people, this is more scary. Despite Sultana's insistence that she is standing up for a, quote, island that's suffering, she is not actually interested in the needs of British citizens. Her primary aim is to, quote, free Palestine. The clue is in the line that she wants money spent on public services, not forever wars.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's what that means.
Why would you... yeah.
Similarly, her suggestion that we need homes and lives we can actually afford, not rip-off bills we pay every month to a tiny elite bathing in cash, suggests that she is, in fact, more than content with waging a forever war when it comes to class.
Yes!
Camilla, I would put it to you that she intends to win the war, actually, not have a forever one.
Also, one of those wars is good, actually.
Yeah. Or against those she disagrees with, who in her mind are either Tory scum, Zionist scum, racist scum, or, of course, genocidal maniacs. Contrary to preaching, wait for it, gentler, kinder politics.
Yes!
Love it when
Corbyn
they say
and
the name of the
Sultana.
movie in the movie.
Yeah. Corbyn and Sultana are the high priest and princess of the kind of nasty, vindictive, and divisive
I'm
hard
gonna-
left ideology.
I'm going to pull you up there. The High Priest and Princess. I don't think those two things exist in the same sort of scale. You know what I mean?
No, they don't know. Divisive hard left ideology, who are the hard left, that saw the Jewish former Labour MP Luciana Berger require police protection to attend a Labour Party conference in 2018, playing all the fucking hits here. Given half the chance, they would impoverish us in their communist quest for a more, scare quotes, equal society, and would revel in our immiseration, believing that we must pay for the sins of empire.
Yeah, okay. The thing is, though, Camilla, give me all of your money and then...
Like, this is absolute A-grade 2018, 2019 level reporting. It's just
How do
throwing...
you've managed
the
to like
whole
drive yourself
article-
this insane again?
The brainworms have never left. Like, the Corbyn derangement problem is always going to be there. It's like a fucking prion. Like, these people all have CJD.
Like, fantastic stuff, honestly. Like,
Yeah. I'm
I
looking
love
forward to another 4 years of this mess getting made worse.
yeah,
Just the
consistently.
British media driving themselves, and yet more heart attacks probably.
Anyway, speaking of doing heart attacks and things of this nature. No, I mean, Mick's here, apart from that, he's a friend of the pod and he hasn't been on in like 1,000 years. But also because he wrote a book, and it's a good book, and you should buy the book. And I want to talk about it with him because it's essentially like if you need like, I don't know, if you don't mind me doing the sales pitch, Mick, it's like I think it's a really good primer to like sort of understand media in general and British media in particular and why it's so fucking terrible in the altogether.
Yeah, I feel like it's, in many ways, I feel like it's a book you give to, a parent or relative who falls for what the Daily Mail is putting out. That's really, that's really its best use case, I think. If we could, if some of these could have been handed out on Father's Day, I think it would have been a good thing.
Deprogramming for Facebook users.
Essentially,
one of the
yes.
things I like one of the things I like in your opening section where you talk a bit about the history of UK media about Lord Northcliffe was that, quote, his instinct was to trigger debates was the way to hold on to the reader, a model that like the fucking papers have followed essentially ever since by just like ginning up endless lines of hysteria, something that has just like never stopped.
Yeah, because his thing was like, okay, report on stuff that's happening, but also where we don't have something happening, just make it happen. So it's like, should women ride bicycles? It's like, and the Mail does the same stuff now. Everything the Mail does now is what he created to start with. It's why that chapter focuses on him and then on Murdoch, because Murdoch kind of refines, I guess refine is not the best word for it, but, doubles down and modernizes the same sort of tabloid mentality. And to be honest, I think the models that those two men established are there in every part of the British mainstream press, as much as somewhere like The Guardian likes to think it's better than that. At its root, it follows the same patterns of behaviour and approaches to presenting and understanding stories.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it is remarkable how little the British press has changed over time in that sense. I mean, I don't think all papers, but like one of the things I was as reading your introduction as well, I was sort of struck by is like, why write this book and not a book about like good journalism or good journalists? Because like I think this podcast as well sort of falls into the not necessarily a trap, but like the very correct observation that like most of UK media, like journalism, fucking sucks and it's just like partisan hackery. But, you know, the stuff that we were just talking about up top, the Financial Times talking about that, Boston Consultancy Group, Gaza Report, you know, 404 Media, there is still really good, like, journalism being done around the place. And I sort of wonder whether or not, like, by sort of being negative, if we don't sort of, you know, also hand it to the people who keep wanting to tell you that journalism is bad.
Well, I sometimes I feel it's a bit like, you know, seeing bits of undigested corn in shit. Like, yeah, there are good bits there, but you know, you're having to identify them. I think my answer to it was, you know, if you want a book, I'm quoting myself in the book, but you know, if you want a book where journalists are heroes, All the President's Men is still in print, you know, but in a less glib way of talking about it, it's that journalism tends to valorize itself, and I think that there's plenty of people who will tell you, you know, journalism is a force for good, and there are plenty of people out there who
are many of those, but yeah, it is absolutely.
It's like, you know, you look at for instance, like the Sunday Times, for instance, has actually been one of the better places for reporting on and revealing malfeasance within the British royal family. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what is their reason for doing that? And what is the rest of the stuff they do, like putting out the rich list every year? So it's like, yeah, there is some good stuff in there, but overall, I think these papers are a force for the negative in the society we have and what that. So yeah, that's my answer basically, is like there's lots of books where journalists tell you how brilliant journalism is, and I felt like it was useful. You know, someone said to me, oh, you know, yeah, we had Flat Earth News. It's like, yeah, Flat Earth News is a good number of years ago now, and was a certain approach to it. I think we need these correctives, you know, fairly regularly. So that was my answer for that, really.
No, I mean, I do think that, like, I mean, this sort of line about, like, oh, you know, we are independent journalists, nobody tells us what to write, you know, we are bloody-minded seekers after truth line that, like, every fucking hack British journo pumps out every, you know, couple of weeks when, you know, some member of the public online simply says that you're shit. It's like, it is a particular, like, obsession. But specifically, I wanted to, because, like, I knew this already, but, like, even more so from reading the book, because, like, you had brief experience in music journalism as well. Can you, like, briefly explain why ex-music journalists who become general interest writers, like, and I'm specifically thinking about like, John Harrison, Caitlin Moran, why are they what happened with 90s music writers that made them all so shit?
I think the 90s music writers ended up being in that area, and, you know, also going back to the 70s ones, because look, you know, don't forget Tony Parsons and Julie Burchill, who, you know, still squat unpleasantly over British discourse. There's that whole prior generation with that.
About Julie Burchill.
You sort of sunshine of the spotless mind yourself. Yeah. Well, I think part of it is because those eras of music journalism trained them up to have quick, glib opinions on a weekly basis that were, you know, outwardly shocking, but really, you know, actually pretty in line with whatever the current trends were. And I think that they just shifted that negative fanzine writer mentality into politics. And they treat politics the way they used to treat shit indie bands in the 70s, 80s and 90s. So they just had the skill set. The skill set was already there and it just transferred over. It's a sort of natural, you know, glibness, tribalness. Yeah. that's it really. And also because that during that era, it was, they were able to build up a fandom for themselves from those papers, and a lot of the people who read them in the music press went off and became commissioning editors of papers and brought them across. I mean, Caitlin Moran is an interesting example because she has been a newspaper columnist in some fashion since she was a teenager, and published her first novel when she was really in her early teens. So it's a sort of she's a particular lifer compared to some other people, but I think that's the reason anyway.
Well, I mean, that's a sort of good lead in, because one of the things that you dedicate your chapters about is like how to become a journalist as well, and specifically for like young people. I think it's sort of a phenomenon that's a bit sort of on the wane now, but like there was this time where, as I'm just quoting you from the book, that young writers were often lured into mining their personal lives and, more importantly, their personal problems for, as we now call it, content, where they really shouldn't. But I'm like, because that stuck with me, because like it's been a while since I've seen those types of articles, like my terrible whatever it is, smeared across several pages in a newspaper. But like, where did that come from? That sort of.
You say that, but this morning I saw the Daily Mail's. I guess she's the fucking celebrity columnist or whatever, talking about all the famous people that have ever been mean to her. Apparently, Ben Affleck called her a right-wing motherfucker. So.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. There was it was a trend sort of 10, 15 years ago. It was a big trend of the kind of personal essay thing. You still see it in the US a bit. I mean, we had the New York Magazine the cut sort of every few months seems to have some like young person do an essay that's basically just designed to make the internet hate them for a couple of weeks or few days, depending on how long the cycle works. But I think what's happening now more with young journalists is they get them on titles like the Reach titles, local titles. Instead of writing about their personal lives, it's just gutting stuff from Reddit and other social media sites and pumping out like 10, 15, 20 stories a day of that kind of stuff. So I think partly probably that the personal life, mining the personal life stuff, it kind of burnt out, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back as a trend, because unfortunately,
I mean, it is cheap content,
sort of cycles. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can get someone to say something shocking about themselves or about their lives, if you can harness some of that outrage, I think it will come back. I think it will come back.
So one of those things that like I am interested in is because you were just mentioning like, young journos now like working on the regional or local papers, like churning out 20 slop articles a day. Is it like, I know journalism hasn't been like massively accessible for people without like family money or family connections for a long while now, but like it doesn't strike me as a world that seems to be getting any better, putting it mildly.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think that there was this period in the mid 20th century where local papers were still a way in, and so journalists, like a lot of older journalists, love to sort of go on about how journalism is a trade and not a profession and whatever, and to a certain extent in the past that could be the case. You've got someone like Harold Evans who ended up being the editor of the Sunday Times and creating the Insight team with this brilliant investigative team. This was all before Murdoch bought the Sunday Times. He started out on local papers and got a job on a local paper and worked his way all the way up to being, at the top of the media. That is highly unlikely now because there just aren't those routes in via local journalism. And there used to be, there was for a long time, journalism was a job that you could get into without a degree, and it's virtually impossible to do that now on any kind of mainstream title. So that's definitely part of it, and that's definitely why it's a more homogenous industry, even as it's sort of makes claims to being, to having various programs to increase diversity. They always seem to me to be very sticking plaster when you actually look at the makeup of newsrooms. And as I write in the book, I'm part of the problem, and I think it's important to note that. But yeah, it's an industry that wants to pretend that it is dealing with that problem, but it's palpably not, and the figures show it's not.
So are there if you I want to come to sort of like your broader conclusions towards the end, but is there in the Brave New World, and of course you have your newsletter as well, of essentially Substack podcasts, Patreon kind of driven business models? Is that if you're a young journo, is that the way forward? Because the problem with that is, as listeners to us will know very well, is problems with libel, problems with research. I mean, I'd like to pretend that we do a lot of original research, but a lot of what we do is underpinned by other people's reporting. But is it possible for young people to to just start something local for themselves, or via these get supporters platforms? Or
yeah, it's possible. I think it is challenging, and what you're saying there about our culture of libel and legal system stuff, it's very difficult to do original investigative reporting on your own. I mean, I've had stuff that I've wanted to do, and I've had to work with other places because of just the legal pressure that comes from doing anything that is investigative. I think the challenge as well with being independent, or building something on platforms like this, is essentially you have to just be really good you have to be a marketeer as well. And there are quite a lot of people, I think, who are good writers, who are interesting thinkers, who are good reporters, who aren't good at marketing themselves. I mean, I've increasingly got worse at marketing myself, which is a brilliant thing to have happen when you have a book out. But it's constantly wanting to be out and say, look at my thing, look at me. It's psychologically pretty draining, and I think that's a challenge. I keep hoping that there's some way to have more cooperatives and work together and collaborate, but also platforms don't easily enable that, because these platforms that are built by very individualistic thinking people. So I think that's a challenge. How you do things financially, and how you share out the money, and how you even ask people for money is a challenge. I think we're kind of starting to look at the problem. I don't know, Substack's getting a bit like cable TV or something to me, where some kind of bundling is going to have to happen, because people only have a certain amount of money to divide up and offer up to things, and that's the challenge. We're hitting a point where it's how many things can you subscribe to?
We need a nebula for words.
Kind of, yeah. But that's the difficulty, and I have to say, since the complete shitification of Twitter and its descent into being X, stuff like Substack, it's a lot harder to do now, because X used to be Twitter used to be quite a good way of getting new people to discover you, and that's just gone. It's just gone. They're very, very difficult now to actually drive people across. And one of the reasons that a lot of people, I have huge issues with Substack and the mentality of the owners of Substack, but one of the reasons I haven't left there yet is because at the moment its internal recommendation engine is one of the few ways that gets new people to come and read what I'm doing. And so you're always making these questions of saying, well, how much can I tolerate, this platform, and who else is on this platform? And I do feel a bit at a certain point, it's almost impossible to find a platform that has any kind of purity. You're always making some sort of concession, particularly, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, where it's very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, we'll say this with fucking Patreon and our back, so
Yeah.
Oh, you mean patreon.com/praxiscast? See, I'm a natural marketing genius.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Everything
It's fucking expensive.
Subscribe to Praxiscast at patreon.com/Praxiscast.
Yeah, what you need is a Rob.
Just need to split apart myself off and do that. Yeah.
No, I'm just considering like the sheer terror of just like getting like a Substack bundle, but then like getting fucking Barry Weiss bundled in with fucking everything.
Yeah. There's no good way to really organise that kind of stuff, and it's difficult. The organisation, obviously, at the start of it is the hardest part, and like you say, it's an incredibly individualistic kind of line of work because people are so used to being that kind of, not even used to being, but used to having that mindset even in the first place of that kind of the lone wolf journalist that is super duper at investigating things and whatever is the.
I mean, the other
dream, but the ideal of it.
The other thing that you really benefit from when you're first starting out as a writer, and which I one of the things I enjoyed about doing a book, as much as it was just did my head in having to wait so long for something to come out, is that working with an editor is like a really brilliant thing when you're a writer, because they spot things that you miss, they push you to strengthen your lines of argument. That is really beneficial, and if when you're writing on your own, that's a challenge. It is a challenge to keep your standards up and push yourself hard. So I don't know. It's an imperfect. It's pretty imperfect, but I always think people should. I'm always in favour of people making stuff. The more people make stuff, the better things are. If that the variety in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you also, speaking of this kind of, the brave new future, one of the things that you mention in the book, which I think is really good and sort of, I don't think it's something a lot of people give a lot of thought about, like the sort of death knocking. So like journalists, like there's some unimaginable tragedy that happens in a local community, and like, a couple hours later, like journalists from all the major outlets are like knocking on the doors of neighbors to like get responses and all that kind of stuff, which is like bad and like sort of atrocious enough. But I wonder if like, the rise of, social media age, everybody having a smartphone, everybody wanting to be their own platform, I'm sort of specifically thinking of like Logan Paul, taking that video of the dead Japanese man. Like this kind of tragedy exploitation sort of to me seems ripe for like a new generation of like horrible like YouTube Shorts, TikTok irresponsible journalism. But maybe I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm too pessimistic about that.
I think that's 100% true, and I think what else happens, of course, is that the established media then says, well, people are interested in this, so we're going to do it too. And we can do it at a bigger scale. So, their excuse around the Nicola Bulley case, where it was known pretty early on, and the police had made it known to journalists pretty early on that she had fallen into the river and drowned, but the media still ran this very long thing of, oh, it's a mystery, what might have happened, and fed into the kind of true crimification of stories. And that social media is bad, but then the established media is even worse because it pretends that it's forced into doing that by social media, that it has to do that it has to have that kind of attitude. And you look now, and like the Daily Mail turns every ongoing trial into a new, into a true crime podcast. It did it with the Brianna Jai case as well, in the most horrendous manner.
That was disgusting on like almost innumerable amount of levels. That one, but like
it was particularly disgusting given that they've demonized trans people incessantly.
Yeah.
And until the point that someone is murdered, that a trans girl is murdered, and then they make it into, oh, it's a tragedy. And then they also, you know, did all the kind of dead naming stuff that we inevitably they do, and then sort of almost there's a lot of victim blaming in that coverage, which is just vile.
The
vile
British
stuff.
media. The British media is just an outfit that is determined to put on the hot dog costume as many times as it can at once.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's like an old line now, but the whole thing around, you know, public interest and what the public is interested in are two different. You know, they're not the same thing, but they will align as much as possible because it, you know. Just prurience is the watchword for this stuff. You know, I mean, it's gross. I mean, I have said these things more eloquently written down. I feel like I'm being super eloquent here. But,
I don't think it needs bigger words and like more elegant quoting, like phrasing than that particular case and that particular series of events with. You know, with the Mail and the Sun, like being vile towards trans people, and then like literally just profiting off the death of a young woman, like off, you know, while wearing the hot dog costume is about as like, even for the low, like fucking moral vacuum that is the British press, that was really something.
Going back to the wider point on the, you know, the social media TikTok-y stuff, like, it's absolutely like, oh yeah, the public clearly want this, so we'll do it. But it's also a great excuse for them to say, well, we might not have published this, but, you know, Dicksucker420 on Twitter has posted a video of some heinous fucking thing. And because they've done it and it's in the public eye, well, now we need to. And again, that's that public interest scare quotes fucking bit. Like, it all just loops back into itself as a, yeah, we'll do it, but also it's 100% not our fault. We've been forced to do this by Twitter. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like,
there was another thing
you publish.
There was another thing in that story as well, which I is a really great example of how kind of myths become like codified as a fact in a case. So they kept saying, oh, you know, one of the murderers had been looking at snuff films in red rooms on the dark web, right? And, like, we know that they just don't, like, live streaming video on the dark web doesn't really exist, right? It just doesn't work like that. Like, it doesn't happen. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't in the case. But every report had this stuff about these red rooms. And it's just, like, repeated over and over again till now. Just everyone not everyone, but, you know, a lot of people who read those stories think that is a solid fact, that there were these red rooms online where you can live stream seeing people being murdered. And it's just like, it's like kind of
that's the plot. This is the plot of some of the favourite movies we've ever watched for this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, it's we know it's fiction. Anyone who knows about this stuff properly knows it's fiction, you know. And then you kind of had stuff like, there was, you know, even there's a band called She Wants Revenge, which was a couple of, like, jaded old producers who did this song called Tear Her Apart. And it's just a, like, gothy pop rock song, but, you know, one of the killers had listened to that song, so that was popped into the mixture of what must have inspired these killings. But curiously, the virulent and, you know, widespread and daily, if not hourly, you know, anti-trans hatred in the British media wasn't a contributing factor. And Sarah Vine made sure to, you know, make that point in her column. You know, it's all this other stuff. It's all TV and video and video games and films that have caused this. Just, I mean, rancid.
It was ever thus, though. You know what I mean? It's like, whenever there's anything happens, and you can draw a direct line between, like, the stuff that's in the papers and the person who's just committed, like, a hate crime of some variety, it's always other factors. And, you know,
you go back to the Satanic Panic or in the 80s and 70s, all of that stuff.
You can tell that their argument basically hinges on, well, millions of people read this shit that we print every day and they don't go on killing sprees, so ergo, it must not be the newspapers that are causing it. You know?
Never mind the direct quotes in that manifesto or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Anders Breivik being such a big fan of Melanie Phillips, or the killer of Joe Cox saying things that were very in line with things that the papers had been saying in the weeks and months before that, years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the sort of Janus faced thing that the British press do a lot, which is to say at once to imply at once that they're highly influential, but also not influential at all.
Yeah.
Mm. I mean, foretelling the fascism on themselves.
Going back to your point there about like the whole thing with red rooms on the internet, that sort of thing is just always been a thing with the papers for as long as I can remember reading the papers, from when I was like 11 or 12 or whatever, and used to read them before Sunday dinner. And
there's a point in the book I bring up the way that like happy slapping became a feared crisis. And basically it just meant any assault that happened that they reported on, they would just say it was happy slapping. And actually you went back and you found that it was a guy who was writing for the Times Educational Supplement about a small trend in some London schools, and then it went from that to becoming people are sharing thousands of these clips. And we're talking in the pre-3G era of people sending crappy video to each other by Bluetooth. It's like happy slapping as a rampage never happened. But of course, there was the Tango advert, is like, oh, that must be part of it. So yeah, you can go back right back to Northcliffe and the first Daily Mail of creating these folk panics. It's always been there. It's just
because who's going to check? Like, who's going to prove them wrong? Like, the effort you would have to go to conclusively prove that wasn't happening is just absurd compared to the effort it takes them to imply that it is.
Yeah, and by the time
some
you
guy
checked
at the Telegraph office sat down, he went to happyslap.darkweb, and he can't tell you all the things that he's seen in great detail, unfortunately, because it's too gruesome.
I mean, obviously, the other thing that everyone already knows is if someone, on the rare occasions where they do get pulled up for printing just something that's completely untrue, and it's because a lot of the time they'll print stuff that's untrue, and it's like the person, the victim of that lie, it's just not going to be worth their time and money to chase them and try and get it corrected. You know what I mean? And on the rare occasions where someone does get it corrected, you get a paragraph somewhere that no one ever sees.
Yeah, hidden on the bottom of page 14 on the inside. Yeah.
One big change that we should have that would be, they'll never do but should have, is that corrections should take up the same amount of space as the original original sin. They'll never do that, and of course we don't have a proper regulator. But if you have one of the few times that happened, required a lot of money to make it happen, was the 80s when the Sun claimed that Elton John had his dog's barks surgically removed to make them, and claimed that he had, claimed that he...
I'd completely forgotten. Even I, as a little one, had heard about that story, vaguely through association. It was one of those almost playground stories.
Yeah, it was a mad campaign of, homophobic attacks on him that, that's the funniest part of it, but there was a lot more to it. But, of course, he had the money and power to, in the end, force them to do a front-page apology to him. But, anyone who has that kind of thing happen to them should be able to get that kind of apology. It will never happen.
I would go further than than the corrections must be given equal prominence, and I would say the corrections should always be on the front page. The first thing anyone sees when they pick up a newspaper should be a list of all the fuck-ups they've had to put right. You know what I mean?
And a requirement that online it be at the top of their homepage for a specific amount of time. The other thing which I didn't cover in the book as much as I would like to, and there will be a paperback, so maybe I'll try and get this in the paperback. Is there's a really insidious way that the particularly British newspaper sites now, they will keep the same page, but same page for a story, but completely rewrite it and completely change the headline. And there's no sense of like you can't track changes. Like, one of the reasons that I'm still sort of semi-obsessed with the print versions in some ways is you catch in amber what they were doing with the story, but the nature of things now, it's like it's wild of how they do not show their changes, and it's really like that's super insidious. They'll say, they'll come up with some bullshit that's tech reasons, but it's not. It's definitely they cover their tracks a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, but speaking of covering your tracks, this is kind of something I wanted to ask you about as well. It's like, one of the things that we've seen, I don't know, how long has it been now? Maybe 10 years, maybe less, that sort of the pipeline from like really right-wing, really like fast shit to like Guido Fawkes to, them being laundered into the pages of the Telegraph, essentially, and then from there out into like BBC, like Question Time, essentially. Like, I know the website's still very much an ongoing concern, but like in the age of still, X the Everything app, where fascists can just like get their message boosted to infinity and beyond. Anyway, like, do you still need that sort of pass through shelf of Guido Fawkes, or can you just like can the Telegraph just go, trending on Twitter now, and that's why we're covering it?
Yeah, the second, obviously they can just do that now, and they do that. Like, this is what people are saying, so we are reflecting that. You look at someone like, Darren Grimes. He became a media figure via just being a social media irritant. So obviously, the pipeline has been shortened. But
look at him now.
Yeah. Reform councillor Darren Grimes. Darren Grimes does has always sounded like a bad guy character from the Beano as well as a name.
It is incredible because like he essentially like set his like he managed to be too annoying, like almost like Katie Hopkins. I mean, although that was for like legal reasons, to be like too irritating to stay a part of like the British media clique, which really takes some fucking doing. But yeah, but whilst on the topic of like sort of new age like media shithouses like Darren Grimes that we can't get rid of, you do mention him in the book, but like I was almost expecting him to like pop up in your chapter after Murdoch. Is Paul Marshall, the new kid on the block, essentially unheard, owns the Spectator, is part owner I think of GB News. So like, is Paul Marshall like the new sort of, because like Murdoch's gonna fucking, I mean, inshallah is gonna die in the next few years. Like, is Paul Marshall the next Murdoch, or like is Lachlan is currently the like in line of succession, if I remember it correctly, or is it the other one?
Yeah, Lachlan will succeed Murdoch. I think he could give far less of a shit about the UK. Like, it's not a big, it's not really a big market in the end. I think Murdoch still, the reason that the Sun still exists is because Rupert, as a print newspaper, is because Rupert Murdoch's still alive, and he, was hands-on in the creation of the tabloid Sun. So that's why that still exists. Marshall, the reason he's not as like super mentioned in like he is covered in the book, but not to a huge amount, is he hasn't done that much yet. He's mustering his forces at Isengard or whatever, but he hasn't sort of made as many moves yet. There just isn't as much but I think he is obviously the next generation of that. The other one is obviously Rothermere, who just the smart thing that Rothermere has done in a sense is to allow the bogeymen in the Mail organisation to be the editors, to be Paul Dacre, so people are more aware of what an awful human being Paul Dacre is than what an awful human being Rothermere is. But the thing about Rothermere as well to note is that he's got his claws into the Telegraph now. He's a like minority shareholder in the Telegraph, and given that the Telegraph's current owners are basically venture capital, I suspect they'll own the Telegraph for 3, maybe 4 years, make a lot of cuts, squeeze more profitability out of the Telegraph, and then I think Rothermere will end up buying the Telegraph, and it will be allowed to be put through, even though the competition law should say no. I think by then it'll be small enough for them to say, "Oh yeah, okay, you can have that as well."
Who's the owner that loves Matt's cartoons so much that he pays him like $650,000 a year?
Yeah,
that was the Barclay brothers, I think. But yeah, it's Matt is a very odd.
What
thing.
does he know?
A lot, I think.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even have to do multiple panels. It's not even a 3-panel cartoon. It's just one, and he goes on holiday a lot as well. So, I don't know.
I mean, you would for $650,000 a year. Why not? It's not like you can't afford to go somewhere nice.
You could spend a long weekend just rattling out a couple of hundred of the exact same facial expression, and just stitch them all together with things you think are likely to. Or I guess it'll be hot. We'll do 20 cartoons for the heat wave, or there'll be something about the roads. We'll do a bunch of cartoons about potholes, and then just just fire them out by email on any given day.
Fill in the words later.
Yeah.
How fucking raging do you think Tim Buckley is in a world where fucking Matt exists?
Matt is the British Tim Buckley.
Because you were just mentioning that the Telegraph is now being bought by this consortium of hedge funds. Is it Redbridge Capital in the end? I forget the name of the thing.
Redbird IMI.
Yeah, but it's essentially, I thought it was essentially Emirati or Saudi money behind essentially.
It initially it's Abu Dhabi. IMI is Abu Dhabi based, and it went through eventually because the Labour government made a change in the law to allow up to something like 15% of the capital buying newspapers to be a foreign government, basically.
Okay.
And the reason it finally went through is the amount that was the Abu Dhabi part of the money was reduced to fit that, basically, and then it was allowed to go through. The Tories previously didn't want that to happen, but the obviously the Labour Party don't give a shit what happens to the Telegraph.
To the Telegraph, yeah. I mean,
overall, it's a pretty disgusting thing that we're really comfortable again with selling off. Having foreign government investment into British newspapers. It was bad enough the things that were allowed to happen, with the amount of media ownership Murdoch has, given that he is an Australian man who's now an American citizen, but still has huge ownership in the British news media. And this government part is, wild. And, of course, a short-sighted thing by Labour to just try and, appease the usual suspects amongst the proprietors.
Yeah, so, I mean, do you just, envision it as, them taking it over and sort of just, gutting it and stripping it for parts? Against the Telegraph, I don't particularly give a shit if, it goes on there. But, at the same time, you have this really interesting stuff in your book about, Vice and some of the other, sort of online media platforms that in the 2010s era of free money were were going to be the big new competitors, and they were going to, the new media is going to survive the print media, and it was going to be, all these companies, Vox, all that stuff that have since essentially gone bankrupt. So because it turns out that, when the infinity free money was over, it turns out that these companies were actually loss making. So do you see something similar happening with the Telegraph, or?
I think what they see it as a way of like of basically building this international media brand that appeals to conservatives in the US by almost saying, oh well, look at this is this old sort of veteran UK brand. But I don't think that'll work because the Telegraph is designed to appeal to a certain sort of mad British person, and the mad American people like a different kind of madness, and I don't think you can do both. But yeah, just a classic venture capital thing. I don't give a shit if the Telegraph disappears under the waves at all. But just looking at the way I think they will. They'll do the traditional venture capital thing of strip it back. It is making money in terms of it is earning money in terms of subscribers and stuff because it has this older subscriber base that will spend money and pay for subscriptions. So that's what they'll do with it. And at a certain point, venture capital wants to get its return. So I don't think it's an owner. I don't think it's going to be owning that for 10, 15, 20 years. Not a chance. And at that point, that's where Rollemere comes in and sweeps it up and takes it over. I mean, the other thing to just back on the Paul Marshall thing is I think he acquired the Spectator for the Spectator Garden Party, and the magazine is almost and the Politician of the Year awards and all that kind of stuff. And the magazine is almost like this vestigial like bauble that you have there, but it's all the other stuff that is the value in that acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
It's what in other words you would call the little black book of the Spectator. Essentially, that's why you buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't not talk about it specifically on our podcast, given our acquaintance with the UK commentariat with our beloved columnists. It's like, I know, like you talk to one of the very few that I respect, Nazreen Malik. She's a great writer. There are a few others, but it's like, on the whole, like on balance, would it simply not be better to like just when we get Climate Stalin to also just pass a law saying no more columns? It's just like it's over, or only Adrian Chiles. Like that's all you. That's all you get. You get one column a week, and it's Adrian Chiles doing something. Delightfully Adrian Chiles, and that's it.
It's beautiful.
I went to the fun fair and realised I'm still alive.
Yeah, he wrote like the only acceptable column about going to Glastonbury for the first time this year. Like it's like the only acceptable one I've ever read because it's just him sort of coming to this beautiful realization that everything he thought was completely wrong. Yeah, should we get rid of columns? Yeah, that would be a beautiful dream. But
I mean, they are fucking cheap in comparison to doing actual journalism. So, like,
they are, and I mean, my realistic answer to that has always been like, is to make columns term limited, or to have it structurally so that you can only do a certain tour of duty on a column and then you have to move on and do some other work for some time, because even people who aren't completely insane are driven insane by having to have an opinion on a weekly or bi-weekly basis for year upon year. I mean, I quote him in the book, but Salman Rushdie had a column in the New York Times for some while, and then he just said, I'm not going to do this anymore because it's stupid being expected to have an opinion, to have strong opinions on things, to order for weeks upon weeks. So that's what the moderate change you could do, but again, they won't do that either. But someone being a columnist for 30 years is a deranged way of living your life.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming up on 5 years of doing this podcast now. Or have we passed it? I've lost count. No, we've passed it. Yeah, we're more than 5 years now, and it's already like I don't feel like we're short on material or stuff to talk about, but like I don't think if I, and essentially every week is a blank sheet, but it's like I don't know. I genuinely hope we don't do this still in 30 years for like any number of reasons.
You think I'll be alive in 30 years?
I think your life is spiteful enough to keep you going past the next 40, David.
You haven't considered how spiteful I can be to myself, actually.
But yeah, I do think like that this leads me back to like this idea. You had a I'm going to quote a little bit from your book. This is you cite this study about this widely known study about the 12 factors that make something news, and one of the authors, this is I think Norwegian, this is a guy called Galtung. Quote, told The Guardian that the consequence of the warning being misinterpreted was that news media give a biased picture of reality. The perception of reality in the public becomes overly negative, essentially because, the death cells and, a kitten found up tree doesn't really, like, people tend to sort of maybe overestimate the negativity of the world, and, and then you're back to you, like, by focusing on negative events, the news presents the world as far darker than it ever really was. And, like, I know our podcast occasionally gets accused of not being, a place of cheerful bunnies, but, like,
this is not a place of honor.
Yeah, but, like, is today's news just, like, darker and bleaker because the world is darker and bleaker, or is it, like, sort of these do these cycles sort of reinforce each other?
Yeah, I mean they do reinforce themselves to a certain extent. I mean, I do quote in the book the bit in Peep Show where Nancy says, "Oh, there was one bus crash today. What about all the other buses that didn't crash?" And Mark's like, "Well, yeah, if the news was just a recitation of everything that happened, it would go on forever." Like, to a certain extent, like, bad news is interesting news. So yes, but also, we do. The news is not inclined to look at solutions as much as it is to look at problems, and that's a big issue. And the Galton and Holmboe study was about saying they wanted to warn journalists that about the fact that novelty and proximity and recency, all these things were issues with how you selected news. And in the end, those 12 factors have now become the list that are taught in journalism schools of these are the things you want to look for knowing if you should be reporting a story. So it's like, I don't know, there's some great irony in the fact that that's become a guide to producing news. It shows you a little bit about how the media doesn't think very carefully about how it structures things, basically.
Yeah. You could even say that they're not actually taking the public interest into account.
Yeah,
and the level of responsibility.
The thing they said...
Twist the meaning of public interest yet again.
Yeah, the academics said it better than me. They said that, like, the problem is that journalists end up creating an image of the world that gives little autonomy to the periphery, but sees it mainly existing for the sake of the centre, which, like, we know that in a country where, left-wing ideas and left-wing people are treated as being on the periphery at all times, or where a Republican, they say, well, there's no support for republicanism in Britain. It's like, well, no, but perhaps there would be if you gave Republican voices anything like the coverage that you give to mad monarchists.
Yeah. Where is the BBC's Republican correspondent? Like, he should get, whoever he is, he should get equal time to whatever dickhead says what the Royals had for dinner the day or whatever the fuck they do.
Well, there's a really good, there's an interesting example. with that as well when you look at the fact that the BBC has a North of England correspondent because it has to specifically have a North of England correspondent because basically the default is to report about the South. Like, it's kind of odd to have a North of England correspondent. There is no South of England correspondent because that basically is all of
That's
them.
everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of the royal correspondent, I haven't seen any like royal news for quite a while. So did they bury Nicholas Witchell with the Queen or not?
I think he buried himself.
I think being made royal correspondent is a special kind of punishment that they give you when they're just like they want you to end up despising yourself.
It's the Northern Ireland office of journalism.
Exactly.
I mean, I do have a, like if you, the top executives at the BBC, are listening, I do have one suggestion if you want to balance it out. If you simply make Kneecap the Republican correspondence, I think that will clear up all your problems in one spell swoop. So that's like before like we had for the day. That is something I did want to touch on. It's like, I don't want to rehash the bullshit about Glastonbury because that was just like the most bad faith bullshit I've ever seen. No, it's not the most bad faith bullshit I've ever seen, but it's surely up there. All the caterwauling about Bob Villan and Kneecap being performing on stage and all that stuff. But it's like, is there any like? I'm always torn about the BBC. Because I do think that like BBC News is essentially a force for evil, but I think BBC like as a television provider, as a television producer, is a force for good. So like I don't know if you like if we should just like burn BBC News to the ground, or like is there a way of saving the BBC essentially, and like should that even be done?
I mean, I think there'd be a great cultural loss if we lost the other parts of the BBC, but I think BBC News needs to be completely rebuilt. I think it's not fit for purpose. I think it's broken, and I think the truth of it is that it is if not a right-wing institution, then a deeply, deeply conservative one. And that goes right back to the beginning of the BBC, when you look at the way the BBC behaved during the general strike, and the fact that Lord Reith was himself reading out news bulletins that favoured the government. There's always been a deference to the to power and to the establishment in the BBC, and BBC News has a huge problem with that. But I'm cautious about the idea that I feel like the BBC is like one of these interwar ideas that were, and post-war kind of inheritances that like the NHS, that if we got rid of it would never be built again. But yeah, BBC News, I have huge problems with, and the whole chapter in the book is about kind of how fucked BBC News is, and how even there are decent people within BBC News, and they know how fucked it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's too big of an organisation to just be like completely made up of cynical bastards and like incompetence. It can't be that. Like,
well, I mean, you've got people like, I think if you listen to Jeremy Bowen's reporting on the Middle East, he can be very good, and he is often highly critical of Israel and what Israel is doing, but that is undermined by the framing of 80-90% of what the BBC puts out on that issue particularly. There are strong and good voices in there, but they are drowned out by almost collaboration, really.
Yeah, I think it's off topic, but I'm going to say I fucking disagree with people who say that the BBC is like a treasured institution that we need to keep hold of, because I think it's shit. I think at one point there was a case to be made that, like, you know, the license fee enabled it to do things that you wouldn't get anywhere else. But I think, like, the stuff it does that actually has that, like, value to it, where it's like it wouldn't, they're doing things that wouldn't be commercially viable and that have, like, you know, cultural value or educational value or whatever. Like, I think they're just fucking vanishingly small amount of their output, because, like, the rest of what they put out is shit you could very easily find on ITV or, like, Channel 4 or anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like, they do still put out, like, documentaries that are quite good sometimes, but then a lot of stuff, like, you know, you've got these, like, really long running programs that have just, like, where they could just, you know, like the long running science programs, they could keep them going because they're not beholden to, like, popular appeal. Do you know what I mean? Like, they could keep producing The Sky at Night for people who wanted to watch that every
Meanwhile,
month.
they're still pumping out Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah, but that gets worse and worse. Like, Horizon is, do you know what I mean? Like, you might occasionally still get something, like, interesting on, like, you might learn something from Horizon, but a lot of the, like, the time because I used to watch a lot of it when I had insomnia a few years back, and a lot of it was like, oh, here's, like, we're researching a fad diet, like, or here's, like, some pseudoscience thing, is it real? And just stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, what's the value of that? And then, like you say, fucking Homes Under the Hammer is just on constantly. They have all these shows where it's like, oh, we're following bailiffs around, we're following cops around, we're following, like, people who investigate, like, something or other around, you know? And it's like, you get that on, you literally get those programs on the other channels. Like,
yeah,
they don't need the license fee. They could, like, you know what I mean? They could make shit like EastEnders and Strictly Come Dancing and all the other stuff that they make to directly compete with ITV. They could make that and then sell it to, like, Channel 5 and use the money from that to make actually, like, stuff that you wouldn't get on Channel 5 or ITV. But they don't. Like, you know what I mean?
One thing I think they should do, which they haven't done, is that fundamentally, right, I believe that the BBC archives belong to us, like they're a state asset. They should be treated like a state asset, and they shouldn't do this thing where they drip out bits of the archive on these, you know, these social media accounts or a little bit on YouTube. The archive should be what they still have, should be fully digitized and fully available, like, you know, not just in library collections or whatever. They should be fully available, and that would make people a lot happier with the BBC as well, if these vast archives of historical stuff was completely available. Like, because it's
if
ours.
nothing else,
like,
we need to, like, feed Adam Curtis for the next 500 years.
But yeah, like, the iPlayer is complete shit. Like, you go on there looking for stuff and it's gone. You know, you're like, oh, I was going to watch this thing. I've heard it's not there now. You know what I mean? Stuff comes and goes, and it's like, why is it, like, you own all this? You made this stuff. You own it. Why is it not there? You know? And it's like, oh, well, because they've sold some of it to Netflix for now or whatever. And it's like, well, why though? You know, why? Like, just drives me mad, you know? Like, they like fucking, like, the British public gets, like, harassed by the TV licensing people forever. And then, you know, they sell stuff with, like, BBC America, and they sell stuff to Netflix and all this stuff. And then instead of making anything that, like, you know, would be a good use of that money, they just fucking piss it up the wall on reality shows and soap operas and, you know, shit sitcoms and dramas and fucking panel shows. Like, are you telling me that, like, if they didn't make Have I Got News for You, nobody else would be capable?
That would be a great thing if they stopped making it, wouldn't it? But I think the other thing that is apparent is that you go back to some of the documentaries and stuff they used to put out in the 70s, 80s, even into the 90s. They had this sense of that they didn't assume that the audience was stupid. And actually, you look on YouTube and stuff, and there are people who are making content that doesn't assume that the audience is stupid and is long form and in depth, and, you know, I mean, even stuff like what Abby makes with Philosophy Tube, you know, it's like there is people are out there who want to, who, if you treated the audience as more and thought that they had a bit more intelligence, because they seem to think that the only things that young people want to watch is just like drivel, and actually the fact is they don't, because they're not watching it.
Yeah.
So I
Bring
don't know.
back some guy in a fucking lab coat with a blackboard behind him, a little desk in front of him and some test tubes on it, and he's going to talk at you for an hour. Just bring that shit back.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
Yeah, fire Brian Cox and get a real scientist.
Well, I think on that note,
there was one thing I wanted to like ask Mick about, which is, do you think, right, that like where the British media, the papers especially, once sort of led the British public, you know, we're thought leaders, right, for the British public at large. You know, like it was the sun what won it. Yeah, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like the British public got their like completely incorrect and, you know, alarmingly racist ideas from the papers. Do you think now the papers have kind of lost control of that, like that cart? Like, because one thing I find a lot when I'm looking at commentariat is you'll see the papers print, like there was a thing today where they had a story about a gang that had been on the tube in the start of June, I think it was, had been on the tube, and they'd been like just sexually assaulting women. Like they got on at one station, like, you know, abused a bunch of women and girls, and then got off at the next station. And the police had released a CCTV image of a guy they wanted to speak to, without wanting to get into the phrenology of like anything about it and that. But they'd like cropped this image, so you couldn't see the guy's hair, you couldn't see what he was wearing. You just see his eyes, which he had sunglasses on. But they gave a full description, despite not printing the whole photo. They gave a full description about how it was a dark-skinned man with black hair and like all this stuff. And then they were like very adamantly putting forward that it must have, like, you know, very strongly suggesting that it must have been immigrants that had done this, with, as far as I could tell, no evidence from the police or you know, witnesses or anything to support that. That was their suggestion. And then the comments, there was like multiple people in the comments going, "Oh, do you know what I mean? Why hasn't the Express just come out and said that it's like it must be immigrants that have done this coming over here on the boats?" And it's like, I feel like, especially since the rise of social media, like, you know, at one point Facebook, but now like Twitter or whatever, people are just running, like, you know what I mean? The papers have lost control of the sort of British public's obsession, because if you used to go to the papers to hear about how everything was the fault of, like, you know, the foreigners or the gays or the women or whatever, and now they're not allowed to sort of be as open about that as they used to be. They have to kind of like couch it and like be a bit more subtle with it. But you can go on Twitter and you can have a guy tell you directly to your face that it is the fault of the foreigners and the gays and the women. Like, and now everyone, you see like the most horrendous right-wing shit you've ever seen, like, put to print, and then in the comments everyone's like accusing them of being lefty and having, like, you know, a liberal bias, and how people never stop talking about how the government is, you know, this government is like welcoming migrants with open arms and so on. And I think a large portion of the British public have completely disconnected from any semblance of reality and are just getting all of their news from, like, you know, right-wing propagandists on the internet.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's a bit like you look in the US, like, you know, that Fox News used to be the channel for like the real, like, frothing at the mouth right wing as well. And then of course now you've got Newsmax, because it's like they need something a bit stronger. And I think if you look, you know, GB News, there was this sense when that came out that people thought, oh, it's kind of a joke, right? But I think GB News is the news channel for those people who feed on the real, like, a hard slop of social media, like, because it feeds them that worldview that they want, and that's they are out of the traditional newspapers can't keep pace with how unhinged it is now.
Yeah.
But
It's a Frankenstein's
I think they're
monster
starting to
situation.
go that direct. I mean, the Telegraph certainly tries, and the Express certainly tries, and I could see them hardening on that as they go along, because they'll just be desperate to keep that audience happy. That's a cheery note, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, if you want a more cheery note, I've got comment to commentariat. It's back in pulp form. What kind of punk rebellion is it to say free Palestine? It's so boring, so mainstream, so unimaginative. Is that comment or commentariat?
It's got to be a comment. It has to be a comment. I need it to be a comment.
Yeah. Have you considered that the true punks are the IDF cum retrieval squad?
Oh, fuck off.
That's commentariat.
Is that Brendan O'Neill?
Oh,
And no, that was a comment in the Telegraph.
thank God.
The article,
One B Neil.
the article was a review of a gig where Kneecap with the Support Act, and it says the headline was "Punk Provocateurs Play It Safe."
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Telegraph, like, calming its like angsty readers. Don't worry though, that, like, you know what I mean. The bad people have calmed down a bit now. They are scared of us. All right, next one. Its first test is allowing Jeremy Corbyn anywhere near the new left-wing party. He's the kiss of death. The man who wouldn't express support for Remain allowed the dreadful Theresa May to become PM,
God.
followed by the even worse Boris Johnson. I'll never forgive him. Is that comment or commentariat?
Commentariat, New European.
Yeah, the New World, as it's called now.
Oh, yeah. Forgot it rebranded. But the New European was such a successful branding exercise. Why would they possibly change it?
Comment the Guardian.
Yeah, I think it's comment, and it's the New World.
It was a comment in The Guardian. The time is right
Oh.
for Zara Sultana's new party, but it's already facing its first test.
Ugh. Fuck's sake.
As I've said numerous times, if you do nothing wrong and no harm to anything, you've got nothing to worry about. We should also fingerprint all illegal migrants coming into our country. This would save millions in crime investigations. Is that comment or commentariat?
Sake. Commentariat.
Yeah, commentariat.
Yeah, commentariat.
That was a comment in the Daily Mail. How watching facial recognition cameras help police pluck wanted criminals off the street made me realise only those with something to hide need fear them, writes David Jones.
Oh, fuck off.
But that's like, that comment there is illustrative of what I was saying there about like the disconnect from reality, because that commenter obviously believes that the like people coming across and like entering the country illegally are literally being welcomed by the government in some sort of facility where they could be fingerprinted, and the government just isn't doing that out of, like, you know, liberal enthusiasm for migrants. It's like,
Yeah. It is a weird thing that they keep all the deeds to those brand new Barrett homes in that centre. I don't really understand why they do that.
Has anyone considered that if you just put Yvette Cooper in the place where everyone comes through to enter this country, immigration would probably just nosedive?
all right, this is a good one. So brace yourselves. Marilyn Monroe started a heat wave in 1954 by letting her seat wave in a fiery number from the musical There's No Business Like Show Business. Her anatomy made the mercury jump to 93. But to hear the BBC tell it, you'd think there was no such thing as a heat wave before climate change. Is that comment or commentary?
God.
Fucking Little John.
This smells like something from Conservative Woman somehow.
I know exactly who this is. I know exactly who this is. It's comment, and it's the Daily Mail, and it's their TV reviewer, Christopher Stevens.
It is, yeah.
Oh, God.
Reviewing heat waves, the new normal. It used to be called summer. Now a hot spell has the BBC in meltdown.
I only know that because I read that earlier and it burnt its way into my brain.
That's always the risk. Doing commentary when you're on.
I know, but bad run today. Normally I have a better run than one in
It's like
one
trying
in
to play.
four
It's
or
like trying to play peekaboo with the Eye of Sauron. You know what I mean? All right, next one. Kneecap are just Goldie-looking chain without the self-awareness and humour. Is that comment or commentariat?
Yeah, that's...
What the fuck? Oh, commentariat.
Yeah, commentariat.
Yeah, commentariat, I think.
That was another comment on that Telegraph article about the gig.
Ah.
All right, last one. What we really need is a party representing the progressive centre where there's currently a massive hole. Is that comment or commentariat?
You're right, there is a massive hole. Oh, fucking hell. Comment, Guardian.
Commentariat, written by one C. Umuna, who some people are calling the Barack Obama of British politics.
Commentariat, James Ball.
That was a comment in The Guardian.
Way.
On that same article about the new party.
Fuck's sake. Oh, well, I'd say thank you, Jamie, but I won't.
Nope.
All right, what I will do, though, is I'll say thank you to Mick for coming on. Please do shill your book.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, the book is called Breaking, How the Media Works, When It Doesn't and Why It Matters. It's available now in all good bookshops and some shit ones as well, I'm sure. And yeah, do pick up a copy. I'd appreciate it. I might be able to sound like I'm not recording from inside a bin in the future if I can sell some copies.
Yeah, buy the book, everybody. Or like, I don't know, if you feel like you're like, oh, I kind of know this, it's like, well, your dad doesn't know this, so buy the book and then give it to your dad. And if he doesn't want to read it, feed it to him.
Yeah, and if you get the audio book, if you do get the audiobook version, I do a range of hilarious voices. So why not?
You should get Rob on to help with that.
Oh, no, don't suggest that. All right, well, for us, patreon.com/praxiscast gets you 2 bonus episodes a month, plus Discord access. Join us on the Discord. It was very funny when the fucking Sultana announcement came out.
Yeah, we were having good times.
Every time it gets brought up. Yeah, posting is back, baby. A woo, wolf howl. Also, twitch.tv/praxiscast, Sundays at 6:30. There are streams that occur then. Usually it's just Alistair and Jamie. Sometimes I'm there. So if you're lucky, I won't be. Also, merch is available at praxiscast.tmail.com. Get ye a t-shirt so that you can be too sweaty in it. Yeah.
Buy a hoodie.
And buy a hoodie, yeah, so you can be extra too sweaty in it. Yeah. Catch you all later. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye-bye.